Ziegler to the stand. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Would you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Shalom. My name is Samuel Ziegler.
And could you tell us a little about yourself, Mr. Ziegler?
Oh, well, sure. I'm a music man. Work with music and theater. I have a degree in it. That, in turn, led me to get a law degree, which led me to go to work at a law firm for 7 years, corporate law, and then until I quit that to work on the Heisman campaign. So clearly I get around.
And how are you involved in today's case?
Well, a good buddy of mine a little while ago introduced me to the Heisman campaign, introduced me to all the work she's been doing. So I thought it was a good cause. I wanted to help out a little bit, so I joined the campaign.
What was your job with the campaign?
I was hired as a communications director, but that was in hopes of initially getting the press secretary job once Heisman was elected. Once that was the case, the press secretary job would be open, since I had been under the assumption that the previous one, Cam DePalma, was getting canned for some pink sparkly flip-flop incident.
Now, what did you do as communications director for the campaign?
I pretty much just wrote speeches and built the campaign message.
Now, how was that election going earlier this year?
Well, initially it started out very well. Heisman was pretty much a shoo-in to get the election, to be reelected. That was until Elizabeth Ginger came into the race. Then we had our work really cut out for us. We had to work a lot harder to get Heisman elected.
What was the campaign's response to Ginger doing well in the polls?
Well, we had to have a meeting on January 10th, 2015, between the senior staff. It was the mayor, myself, Chase Michaels, the polling expert, as well as Tom Lyon, the campaign manager. We had to go over strategy on how we were going to actually win the election.
Now, what was discussed at this meeting?
It was a strategy memo, which was essentially our plan of action, which was to suppress the voters of the 10th, 11th, and 12th districts of Truman, the more low-income, less educated districts, which Ginger had appealed to.
Would you recognize a copy of that strategy memo if I were to hand it to you today?
Yes, I worked with it pretty extensively.
Your Honor, I ask that I get to see the document before the witness.
And would Your Honor like a courtesy copy?
Yeah, thank you.
Now, Mr. Ziegler, what did I just hand you?
This seems to be the memo that we went over in that meeting in January 10th. It was sent from Tom Lyon, campaign manager, to the senior staff as well as Mayor Heisman that we reviewed in this meeting.
Is that a fair and accurate copy of the memo you discussed?
Yeah, thought this was the exact one.
Your Honor, at this time, we'd like to move this memo into evidence as plaintiff's aid.
We would like to object to hearsay at this time.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 8033, then existing state of mind, this goes towards the plan of the Heisman campaign. Therefore, under Rule 8033, it's an exception to hearsay and is admissible.
Your Honor, we have heard no foundation as to who wrote this memo. And so before that, we need that foundation in order for him to say that this was the plan of the Heisman campaign.
Your Honor, the foundation has been laid that Tom Lyon wrote this memo and sent it to Maxwell Heisman, and that this memo was discussed at the meeting, and that there was a lot of talk about it.
Defense counsel, do you disagree with plaintiff counsel's assessment that this is a statement of the drafter's intent, which would go to that individual's state of mind, their future intent or future actions?
No, Your Honor.
Then your objection is overruled.
Mr. Ziegler, what's contained in the strategy memo?
Well, it's our strategies. It talks about the strategies that we talked about in the meeting, which were specifically erosion and education. I worked more closely with erosion. Education was come up with Tom Lyon, which concerned me a little bit, which is why I mainly worked on erosion.
Could you tell us a little bit about what that erosion strategy was?
Oh, yeah, sure. So erosion basically was to erode the effects of Ginger's appeal to the low-income, less educated people of districts 10, 11, and 12. Because in those districts, since if they were to vote, they would tend to vote for Ginger. So the erosion strategy was to point Ginger as an elitist and out of touch from the people and make her less personable.
Now, you said you worked specifically on the erosion strategy. Did you have a problem with the education strategy?
It seemed like intimidation to me. Basically, the education strategy was to point out and call people in districts 10, 11, and 12 who had misdemeanors on their record, point out that there's a law restricting felons from voting, the disenfranchisement of the felons, as well as pointing out the penalties and the residency restrictions if these people were to go and vote.
Now, what did Mayor Heisman say about the education strategy?
Well, all he said was in the meeting, "I don't want this linked to the campaign." Ever since then, they never discussed it in front of me.
You might not have discussed it, but did the education strategy ever come up again?
Yeah, a little bit before the election, a few days, I think it was March 14th, Tom Lyon and Heisman came into my office, slammed some papers on my desk, and Heisman said to me, "Your ads were supposed to hurt Ginger in the 12th. Glad we didn't rely on your messaging." So clearly they weren't using the erosion method, which meant they had been using education.
Objection, Your Honor, speculation.
I find this to be highly speculative. I'll let you respond, though.
Your Honor, if I may proffer, this witness is going to state that the only two strategies ever discussed in front of him were erosion and education, and that it's his personal belief that if education wasn't being, or if erosion was not being used, it would have been education being used, seeing as how these are the only two strategies ever discussed in front of him.
I mean, wouldn't that make it by itself? Didn't you just give me the reason of why it's speculative then? If this individual does not know about other strategies that may have been implemented, and all he knows about is two, to say that the other one must have been done, that's speculative if he doesn't actually know.
If I may respond to that, Your Honor. This witness is not going into the state of mind of Tom Lyon or Max Heisman or what strategy they used. He's simply using his rationally based perceptions based on the strategy memo as to what was done by the campaign. It's not speculation, it's his rationally based perceptions, and it is admissible.
May I be heard, Your Honor?
Yes.
This witness testified that everything that was talked about in the campaign office was not spoken with him. He can testify to the strategies that he's aware of, but to say just because they didn't use the strategies that they talked about with him is highly speculative, Your Honor, and it's in the minutes.
It is speculation. I will sustain the objection and strike any testimony that's regarding to what strategy obviously had to be used.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Heisman, or excuse me, Mr. Ziegler, what strategy did you work on?
I mainly worked on erosion. Erosion was the one that I worked on more closely. I tried to work on education, but when I brought it up, Tom Lyon said, "Don't worry about it." Heisman said the same exact thing to me, so I didn't worry about it.
Now, how many other strategies are you aware of?
None. These are the only two that I'm aware of. These are the only ones we discussed in the meeting on January 10th, the only ones on the memo I reviewed and discussed. So, yeah, those are the only two.
Thank you, Mr. Ziegler. Now, Mr. Ziegler, just to be clear, you were told until the 14th that erosion was not working?
Yeah, it was a couple days
Objection,
before.
hearsay.
Your Honor, these are statements by a party opponent, what they told Mr. Heisman. These are the same statements that he was talking about earlier. Mayor Heisman walking into his office and saying, "I thought your ads were supposed to hurt Ginger in the 12th."
Well, then you should start it like that. The way you phrase that question is exactly hearsay. You're giving someone else's statement without attribution to who made said statement, so that could have been anyone. But for that reason, I'm going to sustain the objection. You're allowed to rephrase.
Yes, sir. Now, just to be clear, Mr. Ziegler, it wasn't until March 14th that you were told by Mayor Heisman that the erosion strategy messaging wasn't being used.
Yeah, Heisman said it on the 14th.
Now, I'd actually like to talk a little bit about Election Day. Now, what did you do?
Well, I voted. After I voted, I went to the campaign headquarters to watch as BNN reported the district-by-district results. It seemed like right away, Heisman went out to a 51-49 lead, which held steady throughout the night.
And then what did you do the next day, March 18th?
Well, on March 18th, I reviewed the results. That's part of my job as communications director. So at the time, I looked over the election results, and it was kind of odd to me because the voter turnout in the 12th district specifically was much less. The expected turnout was much less than what we thought.
Would you recognize a copy of those election results if I were to show them to you today?
Yeah, I looked over it pretty closely.
The record reflect I'm approaching the witness with the same election results. Mr. Ziegler, what did I just hand you?
Well, this looks to be the results of the election.
Now, you talked about expected voter turnout. What were you expecting to come out of District 12?
Well, we were expecting, as in the campaign as a whole, we were expecting 18 to 20% turnout in District 12. What we saw was 15%.
Now, Mr. Heisman, humor me for a moment. What's the difference between 18% and 15%?
Well, I'm a music major, and I'm not a math major, but I'm pretty sure it's 3%.
Now, Mr. Ziegler, how many people voted in District 12?
Well, according to the results, District 12, 7,844.
May the record reflect that 7,844 times 3% is 235 voters when rounded down. Now, Mr. Ziegler, how many people voted for Elizabeth Ginger?
Elizabeth Ginger. In the 12th district,
Yes, Mr. Ziegler.
81.8%.
May the record reflect, Your Honor, that 81.8% of 235 is 192 voters when rounded down.
Reflect.
Thank you for that math help, Mr. Ziegler. Now, there's one more thing I'd like to ask you about. Picture of Casey. Probably on the bottom. Yes, sir. May the record reflect that I just retrieved a photo of Casey French entered in earlier. Now, Mr. Ziegler, do you recognize this man?
Yeah. That's the guy I saw walk into the conference room at the conference center, or at the campaign headquarters, excuse me. I think it was February 28th, 2015. Tom Lyon, the campaign manager, walked him into a conference room when I was working a little late. It was about midnight. Heisman walked in a few minutes afterwards.
Return this to the bench for me. Now, what was this man doing in the campaign headquarters at midnight?
Well, I don't actually know what they did, but I saw them all walk in the conference room. They were in there for 3 hours, came out about 3 a.m. And the only thing I noticed was instead of the guy who walked into the Starbucks cup, he walked out with a thick yellow envelope, business envelope. I didn't know who the guy was, so I talked to Heisman about it afterwards.
And what did Mayor Heisman say about this man?
Well, when she came out, I asked about it, and she said that this guy was from the Midlands Gazette, that he was a reporter talking about the Ginger campaign. I didn't personally believe it. He didn't really seem like a reporter. I work with reporters a lot. He did not seem like one. But after they left, I went and checked out the conference room just to see, because I was curious. And I didn't see any papers about a campaign. I didn't see any tips about any sort of campaign information. All I saw was a Starbucks cup that had the name Casey written on it.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Ziegler. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Vote nominated.